Dr. Kishore Wasan of the University of British Columbia was working to create an oral formulation of an antifungal drug. Little did he know that this drug would be able to treat a deadly disease that affects hundreds of millions of people in developing countries.
Amphotericin B is a drug used for the development of blood-borne fungal infections. So these are the kinds of infections that occur in patients that are very immune compromised. Patients that have AIDS, patients that are uncontrolled diabetics, patients that are going through transplantation, etc.
This drug is usually injected. However, if an oral formulation could be created, it would have several benefits.
It'd be easier to give it to patients, it'd be a lot cheaper, you can get away from the injectable toxicities and potentially the kidney toxicity, and you could pre-treat patients with it before they go in the hospital for a transplantation or something.
But creating an oral formulation of amphotericin B is not an easy task.
Because of the chemistry of the formulation and because of the molecule itself, it's so large and it can break down so easily in the GI tract and the stomach, we just did not think it was scientifically plausible to make an oral formulation of amphotericin B. The whole community felt that way.
Fortunately, Dr. Wasan and the researchers in his laboratory were able to create an oral formulation of amphotericin B. Now this is where the story takes a turn. Amphotericin B is a major treatment for leishmaniasis.
This is a parasitic infection that occurs in the developing world, places like the Sudan, a lot part of Africa, India, and South America. Apparently it affects hundreds of millions of people. Because of poor sanitation conditions, what happens is a sandfly comes along, stings you, releases this parasite, and if you don't treat it within a month, you die.
With the treatment of leishmaniasis as an injection, many of those affected are not getting treated. In 2004, estimates claim that this disease takes over 60,000 lives every year. But with Wasan's oral formulation, amphotericin B will be more accessible, especially to the developing world.
With an injectable form, you have to have trained personnel, you have to bring someone to the hospital, and you have to do things like that. And I don't want to be Barack Obama here, but I'm going to take the medication to the people instead of the people having to come for the medication. And that's the great thing about oral, is that we can now take this medication out to those villages, out to those rural areas where it's not accessible. And it's going to be very, very cheap. And so we think we're going to be able to treat, millions of people at a fraction of the cost.
So then, the issue was that researchers were unsure if the oral formulation of amphotericin B would actually work to treat leishmaniasis. Fortunately, Wasan Laboratories got funding from the Consortium for Parasitic Drug Development, a grantee of the Gates Foundation.
And we tested our oral formulation in their animal models for VL, for visceral leishmaniasis, and we got amazing results. Like, everyone was blown away. We were able to eradicate the infection in less than 5 days in these mice, and everybody was just buzzing.
Wasan Laboratory has made an agreement with Therapeutics, a Vancouver-based biotech company, following UBC's Global Access Policy.
And what ICO is going to do is develop the oral AMP-B for leishmaniasis at a below cost, but we'll develop the oral AMP-B for the fungal infections, which was its original intent, and we'll try to make their money that way. So in fact, it's a win-win.
At this point in time, Wasan Laboratories' oral formulation is not yet in clinics.
We need the money now to do what we call manufacturing scale-up and then the clinical trials. We've got about half the money to do that, so we can start some of that process, but we need more money to get that done. I think once we can get the rest of the money, it will go very quickly. This is a university level project now, so the whole university is trying to help fundraise for this, not just the Wasan Lab, which is awesome.
Once the oral formulation of amphotericin B is in clinics in developing countries, it will help to treat the hundreds of millions of people affected by leishmaniasis. It's a feel-good story.